All right. So thank you everyone for joining us today for our meetup, the African Discipline Agile meetup. And initially we spoke about where people are joining us from. So if you have not dropped that in the chat, please let's continue to drop that and engage. Let us know where you're joining us from. And again, I'll continue to mention it throughout the meetup today. All right. So like I said, this is the Africa Discipline Agile meetup. And this is a meetup where we promote the real value of lean and agile practices. And it's made up of a group of committed, agile practitioners. We are looking at integrating with and networking with individuals and organizations in Africa that have huge interest in developing their agile and lean practices. And of course, we build our knowledge and we transfer knowledge across different practices, for example, Scrum, Lean, Kanban, Safe, Lean Startup, Lean Agile Life Cycles, the traditional way of project management as well when it's relevant. And of course, it includes the discipline Agile toolkit. I also want to mention that this is brought to you by Pete Lauren Consulting. Anything around project management, consulting, training, and thereabout, consult us, and we will be willing to support you and also be looking forward to some exciting news from us very, very soon. And I just look into the chat now, I can see quite a number of people joining us from Lagos, and of course Florence from Germany. That is really good. Thank you for joining. Port Harcourt, that's Shido, Oyinlola, Lagos, and my dear friend Andrea from Nassau, Bahamas, Patrick from the US, Buki from London, and of course Lami from Makurdi, Nigeria. So thank you everyone for joining. So what do we have today? I'm just going to quickly do the introduction and then we'll hand over to Israel to take us ahead. Today we'll be looking at Agile and Cloud, a perfect partnership. And today I believe we just want to bring in another flavor to our meetup. And so I hope today will be a very, very good day and also good time to learn together. Let me quickly introduce Israel and then we take it forward from there. Israel is an accomplished senior cloud engineer, boasting years of quality IT experience from working on working on teams and guiding teams to deliver outstanding results across different cloud domains. And this includes cloud architecture, DevOps, automation, infrastructure, and cloud security. So recently, he started venturing into the fields of artificial intelligence as well. He has expertise on key platforms like Microsoft Azure, Microsoft Web Services, AWS, and he has also supported a robust portfolio of certifications, including Azure Solution Architect, Expert, AWS Solution Architect Associate, and of course, I know for a fact that he is committed to extend beyond this professional pursuit. Israel is the founder of Cloudville. This is an initiative that is aimed at aiding individuals with certification preparation and advancing their IT careers. As a Microsoft certified trainer, does the MCD, Israel is passionate about teaching and empowering others. His interests include playing soccer. We have played soccer so many times together. He loves music. I know that because I ride in his car sometimes, and it's music all the way. And of course, he likes writing. Israel approaches every challenge with a mindset that reflects his diverse background and expertise. is driven by a philosophy that continuous learning and adaptation are key to creating innovative solutions in an ever-evolving cloud computing landscape, and of course, in IT generally. So, when Israel is not at work, you will find him at home, where he enjoys time spending time with his family. And of course, at other times, you'll find him in church. So without further ado, let's welcome Israel and to take us ahead. And Israel, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Pete, for the introduction. Outside of the formal introductions, I have to say, Pete is. I'm actually going to apologize after this for calling him Pete just straight away like that. But he's a big brother. He's a mentor. We've worked together over the years, and definitely he has been one of the big shoulders that I lean on for my career. And I have to say that because considering my career, I haven't had a traditional IT background. I was actually a geologist, and I practiced, for a couple of years before I then switched into IT, due to there was this global oil price drop, and then all companies were not exploring for oil. And this young man had to look for something, to fall back on. Fortunately, it hasn't been something to fall back on. It has actually proven to be something that I probably should have gone for in the very first place. And through the guidance of people like Pete and a couple other people, I am fortunate to be here speaking to you all about Agile and Cloud, perfect partnership. I'm just going to be doing this from the perspective of a cloud engineer, the things that I've seen, happen, experienced on teams, over the years, and how I have come to believe that, combining Agile and Cloud is the way to go. We'll look into, a brief introduction of Agile and Cloud. And I'm very scared to be defining Agile at the moment because I'll be talking, it's kind of like preaching to the choir, but hey, we'll see how we go. We'll be exploring the common grounds between Agile and Cloud, looking into Agile Cloud synergy, and then how DevOps, forms a middle ground between Agile practices for developers, and then cloud engineers who are on the upside, and then the challenges of Agile cloud integration, and then the solutions to those challenges, and then we'll do a conclusion. I just realized there were case studies that I included almost at the last minute, but I couldn't put them on the agenda. But hey, we are Agile, so we'll adapt. All right. Yeah, so Agile. I am not even going to try and define Agile to Agile people, but I'm just going to do what I understand about it, like a summary of it, really. And that Agile is, a methodology that aims to, what's it called now? Get development teams, or as many people as are involved, adopting that methodology to one, focus on results, right? And delivering those results as quickly as possible and get the feedback, so that they can improve that result over and over again. It focuses on, interactions over tools and processes, right? And it's more about people really in the end, because whatever it is that we're doing, technology, no matter how optimized it might be, their value rises and falls on people and adequate adoption by people. I hope I've done a very good overview or summary of Agile to Agile people. If you think so, probably let's see thumbs up. And maybe after this, you send me a message to say, hey, you did good. But yeah, that is Agile from according to Israel, okay? But what is cloud? Yeah, this is my domain now, right? So cloud computing, right, in simple terms, is accessing cloud resources, sorry, computing resources, over the internet, right? A lot of us, I'm sure, I mean, you're joining this call from your laptops, your phones, your desktops. Those are computing devices, right? Now, these computing devices have based on the manufacturer's design, they have limits of what they can do. Whether it's an 8 gig RAM, it has 1 TB of hard disk space, all of those things, right? Now, the thing is this: at some points in time, you might have to, do some things that might be beyond the capacity of that device. Say, for example, one very common use case is that you run out of space, out of disk space, or your phone runs out of space to store, many more selfies if you are into selfies anyway. Or maybe you're trying to process something and you find out that the CPU just runs to 100% and the computer starts to hang, right? It's because of the limit of that device, right? Based on design and form factor, the manufacturer cannot allow for those specifications to be limitless. So if you need something more than that, you might have to go and buy a new device, right? So question is, what do you do if, for example, what you're trying to do is just for an hour? Do you go and buy a new device for something you want to do for an hour, right? That doesn't make sense. It's not good value for money. The next question then will be, what if I can borrow a device, do what I need to do, and return the device, right? Now you're thinking about cloud computing, right? And that's what, cloud platforms like AWS, Azure, Google Cloud offers you, the ability to use compute resources, right? When you need them, for how long you need them, and you just pay for what you use, right? And by that definition, you can already see that cloud computing, gives you the advantage of flexibility, cost efficiency, scalability, right? You are moving from your phone that has a limited capacity to a bigger, resource that can help you achieve your goals quickly, and then you return it without being locked in, into a particular device or spending money, basically. So yeah, that is cloud computing, right? Now, based on that definition, then you start to see some similarities, right, between what I try to define Agile as, in terms of Agile, encourages delivering results on time and in, rapid increments, in rapid improvements. Same thing with cloud. It encourages, agility, speed, and when you are trying to do something or when you are testing out something and you require some certain kind of resource, you can quickly go to your cloud platform, provision that, test out your ideas. When you're done, you return it. Flexibility, you are not locked into buying a device that you just wanted to use for test in any case, right? So this, amongst many other things, are what Agile and cloud have in common, right? And based on these commonalities, you start to think there should be, a synergy, between cloud computing, cloud engineering, right, and Agile, right? Because almost exclusively, maybe these days it is getting better and better, but almost exclusively when you talk about Agile, you're talking about it in terms of software development, right? And developers, alone. While cloud engineering, cloud computing, ops is for, the guys that we are going to give the software product to help us host it when we are done, right? But based on this commonalities between Agile, the characteristics, of cloud and Agile, they should be something that work together, right? So that we have, development and operation teams working together, responding to customer feedback, while the cloud, underlies that and basically facilitates that, right? But really, the reality most times is that developers adopting the Agile methodology often end up, having friction with cloud engineers, the ops people, right? Because while Agile, encourages speed and innovation, we ops people, cloud engineers, traditionally, our goals are to keep things stable and serve, enable users have access to service consistently, right? And therefore, we are looking at stability, risk management, security, and all of those things. Eventually, you have this sort of situation that we have in the image here where, people are just seconds away from doing bass posts to each other, right? Yeah, that is the reality. At this point in time, I feel like asking the house a question like, does what I've said so far, especially with the dev versus ops reality, does that resonate with you? Is that something you've been experiencing? Just a quick survey of
Yeah,
the
thank
house.
you. Right, so feel free to drop your messages into the chat box, and if you really want to talk, you can raise your hands up. We can quickly unmute you and then make it talk. But I can see something in the chat right now from Pamela. Pamela said DevOps is all about stability, security, risk, and so on and so forth. Good. And Lami, not sure if you want to say something. I saw that you kind of maybe sent a smiley. Right. Ishmael, I'm not sure if you can see the screen, the chat box, but I can read it.
I'm seeing the chat box. I see Onyelola. When some organizations do a system freeze in the middle of the yeah, you can that is very annoying. I've started hearing more and more. You built it, you support it. Yeah. Yeah, that is Florence. That is it's a bit of it's a mixed bag when you do that. The aim is to try and empower teams, especially dev teams, to do that, to be able to own, their processes from end to end. But sometimes it is being done maliciously, right? But we'll get to it. We'll get to it. Any other person wants to say something along these lines? When a major event takes place and tech ops is not really yeah. Well, tech ops people too are human beings. They want to sleep. The funny thing about operations is that no one thinks about them until things are going bad, right? When you don't remember them, it means they're doing their jobs properly. It's a noble profession. Let me put it that way. Our reward is in heaven. In fact, DevSecOps is the new direction, Pamela. All right, cool.
Yeah, can I also say something quickly?
Yep.
Yeah, so some of the time I'm looking at the common scenario you have on the screen right now when we're talking about development and operations. The common practice is the development team or individuals will have done their very good job. And then when operation takes over, they are they are long gone to another wonderful journey, another project. And so
Mm,
when operation is saying, well, something is happening here, we don't have the stability you promised. There is a risk of this going down. The,
mm,
the dev guys are already head on in the space of another project. That's number one. Number
mm,
two, most of the people is more like, to a reasonable extent, they have actually, it's like hard drive, the latest some
mm,
of those things that they did in the previous project on their brain. And so the motivation to go back and look and learn and say, oh, what did I do
mm,
18 months ago, 12 months ago is not there. So we can actually see that it's a common scenario that we see. And then you see
yeah.
that they bring new people to now begin to fix what they did not even put together. And that it takes a lot of effort, a lot of money, a lot of
Mm,
time as well.
mm. Yeah, that's a very, very spot on insight. And something that actually does happen a lot. In the sense that the one other thing with developers is um, or developer ops interaction is that whenever they're testing, that has improved over time, but probably previously, when they are, writing code and then testing it out, they usually do it in some environment that they've set up themselves, right? Something, probably even their local machine, right? And then they package everything and it works. But by best practices, they are not even supposed to have access to production environments. So they don't know what goes on in the production environment, how it's set up, whatever dependencies might be there. And therefore, just like you said, they finish the project, package it, hand it over, and they started thinking they're in a different headspace now, right? And now they hand it over to ops people. Ops people are trying to deploy it. It doesn't work, right? And then we come back to this same image. I built this thing. I tested it rigorously. I did so, and so. And they're like, but it doesn't work, right? And they're like, what do you mean it doesn't work? And back and forth, back and forth. But yeah, that is usually the common scenario. And uh, from what we've discussed so far, you can see how that can severely impact, the success of any project, right? Because in the end, what you want is for what you've worked on, well, putting in a lot of time and effort to go out to the users, right? You want them to enjoy it, and therefore, there needs to be a better way to do these things. But before we start to talk about, yeah, what will I call it now? The challenges and solutions. Let's take a look at some case studies of how some organizations have dealt with, these sort of scenarios, right? In terms of bringing agile and what's it called? Cloud, DevOps, all together, right? So case study one, Capital One, right? So Capital One is a leading financial institution, right? And they decided to transition into a tech-driven company. They're a bank, basically, so they wanted to start, offering their services digitally. And in order to do that, right, they faced the challenges, or they had this challenge, slow software releases, manual processes. I could talk to manual processes a lot in the sense that prior to CI/CD pipelines becoming a thing, what we would do is the software engineers, once they are done, they give you their deployment package and say, all right, this is this version of the software. They will give you a set of notes. This is how you build it. This is how you do that. And then you as the ops person will then have to, take that go to your production server, deploy it there, and if you are religious and a Christian like me, start praying to God that it works. Other people, you cross your finger and like, please, 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 please work. But again, depending on your state of mind at that point in time, it might not even be that there's a problem with the software package. It might just be because you're tired, you're then following the wrong steps, right? And then it doesn't work, right? So that's to manual, processes. There's a lack of integration between, for their challenge, there was a lack of integration between development and ops teams, and leading to inconsistent releases, delayed customer feedback, integration, basically they had challenges, right? And what were the solutions that they did, they had, took to solve these challenges? One is the adoption of DevOps, right? Capital One embraced DevOps and introduced automated pipelines, basically eliminating manual processes. So don't do manual deployments to production. If you are here and you know about, I don't want to say you are the one doing it, you know about a place where they are doing manual deployments, try to get them, to move away from that. They adopted a cloud-first strategy. Now they are no longer using on-prem, or physical hardware, basically, where, like I described earlier on, you buy hardware, you find out that it has limits, so you need to buy a new one, right? That alone, for big organizations, where, for example, before you buy anything, you must make a request. The request will go through several levels of approvals before you actually get the hardware. That alone, can delay the release of a new version by as little as a day to a month or more. So having the cloud-first strategy where every of the processes that might need to have been done before, releasing money for a cloud platform has been done. But once you have the cloud platform, you're free to use it as you like. Don't overuse it, Cloud builds can be very scary, but they did that, right? And moved the architecture infrastructure to AWS, allowing them to build and test, innovate very quickly. They adopted the microservices architecture. This is an architecture that basically encourages developers to create solutions in a way that if for any reason, right, what you are hosting breaks or has an issue, right, it can be safely deleted and you can deploy a fresh one, right? It is stateless. It doesn't keep memory. It's meant to run for the time it's meant to run, and you can easily, bounce back up if that goes out. You don't have to spend time trying to troubleshoot that particular one that has an issue. You can easily deploy a new one. Another thing about microservices architecture is that previously you have monolith architectures or softwares where every component of that software, say for example, a banking application, right? It has authentication, it has withdrawal, it has, deposits, components, all those features, right? They bundle everything together. So it means if one of those features has an issue, right? Yeah, and they want to, there's need to like troubleshoot it, they might, you would expect that they will bring down the whole application just to troubleshoot one feature, right? But with microservices architecture, you are able to separate those out into different components that work on their own and have probably a central integration point where they use to communicate to each other, but they run independently of each other. So if one has an issue, you can easily go and fix that while the system is still running. One of the other things that they did was to adopt DevSecOps, which is usually one of the biggest DevSecOps, looks into one of the biggest issues or friction points between the dev and and the ops people, in the sense that speed, the speed that Agile encourages, and the speed that innovation sometimes require doesn't necessarily have security as a top priority, right? And therefore, once devs, are able to figure out something, most of their time they are like, yeah, it works. Whatever it is you want to do it, you can do it. Security is none of my concern. You're going to fix that, right? But here you can see they adopted DevSecOps into their processes such that right from at the point where the softwares are being deployed already, there are security checks embedded in that process, so that by the time it gets to the point where it is fully built, the ops people will know that if it had passed the security checks during the pipelines, then it's obviously fine, right? And based on that, what are the results that they achieved, right? Says by leveraging AWS and adopting DevOps practices, they were able to reduce infrastructure provisioning time by over 99%. Their development teams now release code multiple times a day. Remember what I said with physical hardware. If you are needing to purchase a new hardware just to be able to accommodate the deployment, and you're having to go through approvals and everything, now they are able to even do it multiple times a day, right? And this, of course, that if they're able to push out new features, users will be able to give them feedback, quicker. And then obviously for another organization that is not practicing such a system, right? Obviously you will know that they'll move away from the other banks and come to this bank, that hears us, and gives us the features that we want. In conclusion, that transformation through DevOps and cloud adoption, showcases the power of Agile, DevOps and cloud synergy. The integration of those, automation microservices, help them to streamline their processes, meet their customer needs, and continuously innovate. One other case study, right? The Daily Telegraph, a major UK newspaper, faced disruption, around 2009, and they decided they were going to modernize their IT systems to keep them competitive, right? They faced challenges with, managing infrastructure, application releases, having downtimes, a lot of downtimes, while making changes. And, their major challenge was that, their deployment processes were slow, right? They have siloed teams, kind of like the same thing we saw in that diagram, two teams on, different ends of the spectrum. Basically, they have their own ideas of how to do things, right? And because they also had legacy systems, it slowed down agility. You get the picture. They had, a slow process, manual, legacy systems, silo teams, leading to, significant challenges. How did they approach it? They used the get it out there approach, basically a bias for, results, a bias for, what's it called now? Whatever it is you're doing, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? Just get it out there first and foremost, right? And then iterate. So that is basically a bias for results, a bias for speed. And the way they did this was to move the application to a software as a service model, which means really in deploying applications, you can choose a model that suits you and your budget, from infrastructure as a service model where you are probably hosting it on a server and people are going to a website, or platform as a service where more from the upside, you are not using virtual machines, you are not managing your hosting environment anymore, right? Someone is providing a hosting environment and all you just need to do is bring your code onto that environment, or a software as a service model where you don't even manage anything at all. All you just need to do is have your software and your data. There is a platform, right? There's software already for you, and all you just need to do is plug in your data and everything, and it runs, right? So examples of software as a service is probably what? Actually, we are using one right now for this meetup. It's Zoom, right? We didn't create the software. We are just here, and we are bringing ourselves. We are the data right now, right? And basically, that's what it transitioned into, a software as a service model. Now, the other thing that they did was DevOps transition, right? They got more developers and started, applying DevOps practices to their workflow. And, with the get it out there approach using DevOps, right? They're now biased to do faster builds, create systems that resolve or heal themselves whenever there's an issue. And basically, they worked to reduce downtime, right? Now, the developers also were then included in on-call processes. Usually, the on-call processes are for ops people, right? Once they've developed the software and handed it over, they forget about it. But now developers were now included in such processes where if there's an issue, right, or not necessarily an issue, if there is feedback from the clients, right, the developer is one of the first people alongside the ops people that will receive that and triage it. And so they got to be more involved, or closer, to their user base, and started to get the feedback to directly, not secondhand, feedback that passes through ops people back to them. One of the other things that they did was to fully empower the teams. So, which was, I've forgotten the name now, but someone did mention it where, they are adopting a you build it, you support it process, right? Right now, the dev teams were empowered to manage their code all the way to production, right? And they operated under the principle of we build, we support, we own, meaning that this time around, what they did was to remove that virtual separation of the teams, right? That there's an ops team and there's a dev team. Is the team, right? And that team has both the developers and the ops people. So it's more like we, right? It's not like our team, their team. It's all everybody all together in that same team. So they are building it together. They are deploying it together. They are supporting it together. They own it. So in that sense, everybody, was brought in together and made responsible for the success, of that application. And what were the results? That they recorded 25% more releases, 10% fewer failures in new features, 7% reduction in downtime. Continuous releases became standard practices with, daily stand-up and fortnightly sprints. So what was the conclusion that they derived from that? It showed the importance of empowering teams, integrating development and operations early, right? In the sense that there's no developer works on it first, and then, ops people take over from there, right? They are both integrated, and from the start, they are already working on it together. They are looking to get feedback quickly, right? So that they can adjust and adapt, removing silos, automating releases, embracing collaboration, and that significantly improved the speed and quality of the digital services of the Telegraph. Right. So if I would then bring us back to where we were before we looked at these case studies, right? We were looking at, we paused at a point where we saw devs on one side, right? And ops people on the other side, about to, give themselves premium boosts, right? And we could see that both sides had, what's it called now? They had good reasons, for their positions, right? And we have also now gone into case studies showing you know, these problems, this kind of problems, organizations having to grapple with them and what they did, to overcome these problems, right? So from those two case studies, what word or what methodology, for lack of a good word right now, comes to mind as being a key to the success of these two case studies, right? Between Capital One and the Daily Telegraph, there's a word that keeps popping up. A word that keeps popping up as being something that they did or used. If I can get people to, well, I think I think I've clicked too fast. But yeah, DevOps, right? DevOps is that bridge, right, between the dev and the ops teams, right? It works. It works, especially when adopted properly. It does work, right? Where there's no longer the dev, yeah, there's a dev side, there's an ops side, there's now DevOps, right? It's basically what, say, the Daily Telegraph did, right, in terms of integrating the teams early, right? It's now, there's no separate teams. They might not call it DevOps team, right? Well, basically that's what they started doing, right? They might not necessarily practice all the dictates of DevOps, but that's what they became, right? Now, DevOps, my experience is, like everything human beings lay their hands on, they tend to stretch it a bit too far sometimes, right? So DevOps, starting out as a philosophy, has now become what you, in the industry, it has now become a full-fledged role, even though that's not what it was, intended for, right? It's a philosophy that aims to break down silos, really, right? Remove any barriers that exist between the dev and ops teams. By encouraging collaboration. It's a philosophy that frowns heavily at doing things manually, right? If you do it manually the first time, just to ensure that it works, right from that moment on, you need to start thinking about, how can I automate this process, right? How can I make sure that this process is repeatable, right? How can I make sure that this process is stable, right? And therefore, I also want to bring it up now that even though DevOps works, right, and DevOps has been touted as the solution, okay, it is not the solution, right? It is a solution, a very significant solution, right? But it is one of many solutions. And I'll say the reason why that is, right, is because while DevOps is being practiced by many organizations in different shapes or forms, right? As compared to, maybe any other methodology, right? Over time, we have come to realize that DevOps, with its definition and its dictates, actually get received differently from cloud teams or ops teams to dev teams. It's the same name, the same dictates, but the different sides understand it differently. So for what's it called now? For developers, DevOps is what? Faster code releases, right? Less waiting time for infrastructure. So for a dev person, I'm trying to test out, a theory. I'm trying to see whether this new feature works. I need infrastructure to do so. DevOps basically means those infrastructure is provisioned very quickly. You don't need to be writing requests and then waiting for the ops person to do, because now the ops people already have processes that make sure that the moment someone request for it, it can trigger a deployment, and you have your infrastructure easily. Cloud engineers also then use DevOps to ensure that they have stable environment, they have secure environment, scalable environment, right? But again, DevOps usually would mean different things to different people. So with that, the question would then be, okay, we thought DevOps was the solution. Forgive my language. It will now become a question of, in Yoruba, is Nibola to Jasiba you. Like, what's happening again? I thought this is the solution, right? Yes, it is one solution, and it has worked, so well so far, but there are other factors to it. But also, encouragingly, over time, right, especially from the ops side, right, there has been a trend towards infrastructure as code, policy as code, and a couple more, technological trends like that basically tries to get ops people, right, to manage infrastructure using code, right? So because of course DevOps, encourages automation, eliminating manual processes, right? So in that sense, we are now using code to deploy infrastructure. So before, where we would have to go and buy hardware, we left that, moving into cloud, where we can provision it from a cloud portal with manual clicks, and to the point where we are now able to write a few lines or to 1,000 lines, and then it will build the same infrastructure that we were creating through a graphical user interface, right? You are now able to do so using code. Now that operations people now write code, right? It gives us the chance to then manage our infrastructure just the same way as you would manage, a software application, right? Because now you have to store that code in, code repositories, so that you can have audits for who changed it, who did what, Basically, you start to work the same way software developers now start to work. And what does that do? It then gives us a chance to apply the same set of agile practices that software developers are already used to, right, to cloud engineering, cloud computing. And so ops engineers now, right, are able to see from the side of the developers, right? This also then makes agile and cloud integration, right, come back into the picture. But then again, there might be challenges. And let's look at these few challenges. Same thing as with those case studies. What are those challenges that might arise from trying to, integrate agile and cloud? Based on the fact that now that infrastructure can be managed the same way as you manage software, and therefore there is the chance to integrate agile processes into cloud engineering, right? What are those challenges that might come up? First one is cultural resistance. Ops people are, how will I call it, historically not one for, a lot of project management, agile project management, and dev processes require a lot of talking, right? And us people, we don't like to talk. We don't like to talk. We don't like meetings. We just want, it's more like we have a lot of things to do, and we are tasked with keeping up a system up and running. We have to keep doing monitoring. We have to ensure that there is no one trying to hack us from any part of the world. All of those things. And we've been able to do these things successfully over years, from generations of ops people to the other. We don't talk, right? We just do our things. And therefore, that alone can be the first thing. Cultural resistance, whereas agile teams or the agile process, agile practice encourages what interactions, right? Feedback, collaborations. So you can see where the issues start to come up. But more importantly, beyond that deep dive into the nature of both devs and cloud engineers, is that they might have these two sides usually have workflows that they are used to, because over time they found it to be very efficient for them, right? In order to have this agile cloud integration, basically bringing the dev and the ops side together, they would have to adjust, adapt, and that might be a big problem. One other thing that is likely to be an issue is a tooling problem, right? Devs would definitely be used to a certain language that they use to write their code. And that language, for example, will have, follow-up dependencies, like, because this is the language we use, this is this other, software or tool that works well with it. And therefore, they have an ecosystem that they are used to working with. Same thing on the, upside, right? They have this tool that they use. There are complementary tools to that one, and they have their own ecosystem, right? Now, when you're trying to bring them together, right, it might become an issue. Not that it becomes an issue. But one other thing is this: Agile moves fast, and therefore developers move fast, right? Ops, by its very nature, right, they can move fast. They actually can. But it does happen that when you're with speed, speed increases the chance of breaking something. Also, speed increases the chance of missing out something. And I mean, we've heard about data breaches. We've heard about, just a couple of weeks ago to a month ago, we heard about CrowdStrike, right? Where someone pushed the wrong code, into, and almost brought down the whole world, right? If an ops person were to look at it, he will have said, yes, exactly the reason why we need to slow down things, right? But also, in this day and age, a lack of speed is basically the beginning of your company or your software or whatever you have dying out, because there are other people innovating faster. So there needs to be a balance, right? So yes, compliance and security requirements can also be a challenge to that agile cloud integration. And then there's the visibility requirements. Usually for the kind of speed that innovation requires, it might mean that the dev people need to go and work on a feature or an idea in their own environment, right? To go and test things out. And usually the way it happens in organizations these days is to create a dedicated dev environment for developers to go and do whatever they like, play around with that. So a lot of times there is no real focus on security or best practices in that environment. Ops people to just leave it to the devs to go and do whatever they like. They don't really focus or try to get them to do the right things there. So what usually happens is, one, even in that dev environment, especially in a cloud platform, you might find out that you are then racking up some serious costs because a developer has gone to test out, something using resources that they probably don't need to use in the first place, right? They didn't optimize for cost or for security, right? And also is the fact that because ops people are not really looking into it, right? They might now be finding out that there are issues at the end, almost like the waterfall, process. All right. Even though we are now practicing agile and now using cloud platforms to enhance that agility, you might still end up having those same waterfall problems. Therefore, but then if you are then starting to monitor everything that the dev does, an ops person might not have time actually to do their ops, optimization. So how do we overcome these challenges? All right. One is training and culture. Again, like we said from the very beginning, both Agile, DevOps, one thing that they push really hard is it's not about tools, it's not about tech, it's not a process, it's more about people, right? Everything that is built rises and falls on people, right? So that training and culture component is very, very important, all right? And uh, I found devs are much more amenable, right, to agile practices than ops people or cloud engineers. But it should be something that is then focused on by organizations to build a culture of, continuous learning and collaboration, an agile culture. Um, it shouldn't just apply to cloud teams alone, sorry, dev teams alone, but to both teams. Yeah, collaborating across the entire life cycle is one of that thing. Traditionally, you find devs start to work on the code and everything from the beginning, and then ops people prefer not to be involved, right? Just do it and send it over when you're done. But that shouldn't be the case. It should involve them, all stakeholders if I may say, in that whole process to be in the know right from the beginning to the end. Another set of, solutions or things we can do to overcome those challenges is to have unified tooling. When both the ops teams and the dev teams are able to use the same set of tools, there's a high chance that they will collaborate because they are now speaking the same language, right? So any chance for them to use tools, common tools, it should be something that should be taken. Share priorities. We saw earlier that devs are looking to release features quicker, right? That's all they want to do. I want to push out this new feature as quickly as possible. I want to test this. I want to iterate. Whereas ops people are tasked with stability, security. They are being judged by different metrics, right? Now, if we can combine all these metrics together to say it is not just this one for devs, this one for ops, right? But have everything together so that both the devs and the ops people, right, have the same set of metrics that by which they are judged by, there will be much more collaboration, and the ops people too will be looking to help the dev people to achieve their goals, right? While the dev people are also looking to help the ops people to achieve their goals. Automation, removing every manual process. I can't stress this enough, right? Encourage, automated processes to ensure scalability, compliance, and security. One of the ways by which this can even be done for devs, especially early in the process, is to introduce tools like there's this tools called static application software testing or dynamic application software testing, right? Where or security testing, sorry, where while developers are writing code and pushing them to their Git repositories, there's already a tool that is scanning the whole thing to ensure that they are not using bad practices, not including sensitive items in the code and everything, so that by the time it's time for deployment, right, the ops people are actually very confident that this code that is coming has passed all the requirements and will, has a high chance of succeeding in production. Cross-functional teams, if possible, right? Different organizations are shaped, in different ways. And you really can't tell an organization they must follow a particular, system or organizational structure, especially if the structure they are using is working for them and is showing up very well in the bottom line. It will be hard. It will be hard to tell them to change the organizational structure. I've worked across organizations where what's it called? They have teams, a not even team. They have a full organization for ops, right? And then basically another organization for development. And this sort of problems that we're talking between dev and ops then happen at an organizational scale, like a larger scale. They make it work. They do make it work. But obviously, cross-functional teams is not going to work for them, right? Because these sort of organizations have been around for a long time, right? Some of them are the template by which some other organizations actually work. Like, oh, it works for example, it works for IBM. Why can't it work for us? It works for, Microsoft. Why can't it work for us? And all, those sort of things. So much so that it is almost an unsaid rule that cross-functional teams is probably suitable for startups, or organizations that are looking to just begin and not maybe organizations that are already existing. But yeah, cross-functional teams will help. And with that, come to the conclusion. Agile is key. Being agile is key, and it's a key requirement for modern organizations, modern environments, and when done the right way, it is agile and cloud are a natural fit, because they enhance each other's strength. Together, they provide the speed, scalability, flexibility, stability, security for modern environments. DevOps is a major enabler of that agile and cloud synergy or integration. Again, we saw that while agile, is more about people and collaboration, right? The adoption of the right tools, technologies, and processes can significantly increase agile's impact, and that beyond, tools and processes, right? The real key is a collaborative mindset and breaking down silos, or barriers between the dev and the ops teams. So I will round up by saying Agile and cloud are a perfect partnership, and together they allow us to achieve collaborations and eliminate silos. They help us to build and scale better, faster, and smarter. Thank you very much. If there is anyone with questions or contributions or insights that an ops person can take away from agile people, I'll be very, very happy to hear that now. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Israel, you've done justice to the delivery today. I know because this is one aspect of our one aspect that is really not fun to talk to, but you engaged us and it was really good. Thanks for sharing those practical nuggets. We've got a question or two around the specifics or the Nigerian specific environment, right? And this is from Jeremy. Pamela, thank you for doing justice to answering in the chat, but I just want to throw it down for people who have not been monitoring the chat. So the question from Jeremy says, what organizational or cultural changes are necessary for the Nigerian companies to fully embrace the combination of Agile, Cloud, and DevOps? And it went on to say, how can government and private sector leaders foster a culture of collaboration and continuous improvement? Israel, do you want to give a shot? Knowing fully well that we are first Nigerians before we move. So bring that mindset here because we are deeply connected, So let's really look at that. Nigerians.
Sorry, I got the gist of the question, but can you read it out again? Sorry.
All right. Yes. So, what organizational or cultural changes are necessary for Nigerian companies to fully embrace the combination of Agile, Cloud, and DevOps? And the second aspect is how can government and private sector leadership foster a culture of collaboration and continuous improvement?
Very big question. Very big question. For me, I would approach it from the point of not necessarily thinking about it as a Nigerian company, but as a company that wants to succeed, right? There are only two types of companies, companies that succeed and companies that fail, right? Because Success has many friends, many parents, but failure, has has no parents, has no friends. And it doesn't matter where you're located. If you want to succeed, you have to use the right principles. That's where I'll start from. Now, that is a high level answer. Now to approach it from being a Nigerian or a Nigerian company and in the tech space, honestly, even though Nigeria has its nuances, right? Principles are still principles, right? And it is especially easier if it is not a government organization, right? But again, I will quickly put it here that a lot of things that you think are Nigerian problems, actually, they are global problems. They happen everywhere else, right? And so, if that's the case, it means that the solutions, can also be global and apply to your context. The only thing is just that your context might require some certain adjustments of the solution, but that's what you then need to work on. Because DevOps is DevOps. The same tools, processes can work, right? So in terms of Nigerian organizations, I guess one of the first things that I know culturally to be, I hate to say it, but that culture of collaboration, a lot of times we want to own things, right? We want to own things end to end. It is my thing, I did it. And while it is good in terms of ownership, right? Part of that ownership should be focused, like that ownership should be focused on success, right? Not necessarily fully owning something, whether it fails or succeed, but the ownership should be focused on success. So much so that if you see that this process or this person or this team can help me achieve success, I probably need to be working with them, right? And become more open to them, sharing knowledge, sharing ideas, and being open to feedback, right? That's what I think. With government, it might be a bit trickier because government are notoriously bureaucratic. And sometimes they need to be, right? But most of the times we've seen that it tends to go against the kind of agility that or the kind of innovation and speed and everything that Agile requires.
Yeah. So
that being said, there are new leaders popping up and new trends coming up where more and more people are becoming, having more knowledge of Agile practices and seeing how they can be very effective and introducing them. So probably it might be something that Nigeria just needs to catch up with. Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Israel. I'm very mindful of time where, given that we started a little bit late because people joined a little bit late, we are over the 1 hour mark, but the questions keep coming. So what I'm going to say is we're going to quickly run through some of these questions and we'll make the recording available as well as usual. And so if you are not in a hurry, just stick with us for another 10 minutes and then we will round up from there. But thank you so much, Israel. The other question is all around cost, and I can also just encourage Patrick and Pamela, if you want to share something, let me know in terms of these questions. That will be good. One question is, how do we achieve DevOps, without incurring significant costs? That first of all, let me put it out there. Transformation, DevOps implementation, it's not cheap and it cannot be cheap, right? So if you want to go into it, money will be involved. Buy-in from the leadership, the cost center owners, is very important. So before you say before you begin to throw those buzzwords, DevOps, SecDevOps, DevSecOps, whatever we call it, be prepared to spend the money. Now, the result you get is directly proportional to the infrastructure that you put in place and also the human power that you put in place. If you manage something, that might be the weak link that might break everything. So I just want to put that ahead. I've seen organizations spend billions of dollars. I'm presenting at the PMI conference, global conference in November, and one of my case studies is talking about billions of dollars that a transformation, which includes this spent. So it is not cheap. I just want to mention that. But Israel, do you have anything to add to that cost cutting aspect?
So I just recently worked on a project where it was based on basically cost optimization, right? And at the point where we started the project, there was a lot of questions like, this looks like a no-brainer. Why would anyone deploy this environment like this, right? And and then as I went along, I started doing it, the results were coming in, and I'm like, this was what you should have done from the very beginning, right? And then I had to sit down with one of the, in quotes, old people, and then he gave me an history lesson where he was like, look, this environment, when it got deployed, right, the goals at that time were to migrate it within a very short time frame. And therefore, we had to use this set of resources, across board, right? And so as at that point in time, they met our goals, okay? We knew about the cost, we knew about it. What I'm trying to say is this: whenever you're deploying or trying to, implement Agile DevOps, it's your goals that matter, right? It is not necessarily costs. Cost is relative, okay? So while the cost might look high in terms of the monetary figure on the bill, right? What value is it bringing back to you? Okay, of course, you can talk about optimization, but there's such a thing as over optimization, such that now because you've followed everything by the book, and it, on paper, it looks good, the organization is not able to work or move because it's now, saddled with too many, restrictions. So the real answer to this is it depends, right? It depends on your context. It depends on your context. But the one thing that might help is scoping out what you want to do earlier, right? And be able to then decide on which resources or which tools work for you.
I'll jump in there, Israel. I'll jump in there because of time. Patrick, you seems to have something to add on this one quickly, and then we go to the one final question, and then we close for today. Patrick, do you still want to add to that question yet?
No. I mean, Israel has dealt with it, but I mean, once it comes to cost, really, it's all about options, and the options in the market increase day by day. So your cost will come down. It's your ability. In most cases, it's you understanding what you're trying to avoid, what your configuration is going to be, and what your options are out there. As to the other question of the Nigerian thing, a lot of this stuff has been embraced, especially in the private sector.
Yeah.
The government sector, you really don't see it. And a lot of the technology and stuff is embraced there too. But why they don't showcase it and why you see the hiccups is it forces transparency. And we all understand why transparency is not an option.
Let's not go there. All right. Let's not go there. But it is the point of well taken. Transparency, it's a key thing, and that is in the heartbeat of Agile. So, but yeah, that's a very good point there. Guys, I'm just gonna ask one last question, which is very important because it talks about what you told us today. And once we do that, I'm just gonna round up by sharing the PDU code today, and then we close. Now, this is from Florence. Florence has a question concerning the lessons that's been learned from the CrowdStrike outage. CrowdStrike is an organization that uses cloud solutions and also exposes itself to the risk of a cloud failure in a cloud solution, critically impacting the business, right? The question is, what can be done differently to minimize the risk? And I know there has been a lot of people in the community, in the industry that have really analyzed the CrowdStrike outage. But if you look at it from our perspective here, just in 2-3 minutes, what is your perspective to that? Because when we say CrowdStrike, it uses cloud solutions, they are DevOps by nature, but actually the same thing that they use for their delivery, for their ways of working also came around to hunt them and nearly brought down the whole world. So what can be done differently to minimize this risk?
First and foremost, we have to understand that whatever it is we are going to say right now is from an outsider's perspective, right? And whatever it is that was provided as publicly as the root cause, right, is most likely not going to be the whole story, right? So that's one thing we should note. But more importantly is that Agile DevOps, right, also encourages continuous improvement, right? And therefore, the thing is this, strengths can become weaknesses, right? Either permanently or temporarily. The real reason why we have continuous improvement is because we know that, it is not a perfect, once and for all answer. Like we continue to know more, learn more, and therefore whatever learnings we get, we have to apply that. And which is the reason why we actually have such a thing as root cause analysis and lessons learned, right? So it's more importantly is not to necessarily think that CrowdStrike did something wrong, because obviously they pushed a change based on the same set of processes that they've been using over time has been successful for them, right? It is more like, oh, this has now happened, embrace it, learn from it, they've done the root cause analysis, learn from it, and implement whatever new learnings that they have found to ensure that such a thing doesn't happen again in the future. So I guess it's the same process that will apply across board in any other organization is, yes, things like this can happen actually. And the most important thing is to, one, analyze the root cause properly so that you can pinpoint the issue and then learn from it, continue to improve. Well, if it doesn't kill you first anyway.
Thank you. If you start your career as a tech person or you're still in tech, I think almost every tech person, including myself, has that one or multiple times that you've become the popular person by pushing a plug or by sending a configuration that turns around. In this instance, it turned out to be a global phenomenon. So again, it can happen. However, I would like to give it to CrowdStrike, especially the CEO, for managing it the right way. So some high level of transparency and communication and stuff like that. But again, we will like to bring this to a close now. But before that, I want to say a very huge thank you to Israel. It was well facilitated. It was well conducted. I know it's one area, again, I'm saying it, that it's not interesting to talk about, but you made it so interesting and engaging. And so everybody is saying thank you for your time. Again,
Thank you.
Just for the record,
Pleasure.
Israel had to wake up before 5 a.m. to be part of it. So it's still very much early where we are here in Australia. So thank you. We don't take that for granted. Thank you so much. All
My
right.
pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, cool. Okay, so quickly, I will quickly share my screen again and then share the code for the PDU code so that we all can have that. Okay, cool. I am going to share this. All right. I believe you should be able to see my screen. I can't see anyone else now, but yeah, let's quickly share this. All right. So today's presentation is over, and what we want now is the PDU code. So that is a PDU code for today. Please, you can use that. You will be able to claim an hour of today's being part of today's meetup. And of course, like I always say, let the conversation continue because there is so much that we can learn from one another. There is so much we can learn from another. Please connect with myself, with people on the call, with Israel as well on LinkedIn, so that we can talk more about this. And with that, I will say thank you so much for joining us today. We will stay connected. Next month is another month, and then I hope to see you in the next meetup that we have. And of course, there's a big one coming again in Rwanda this year. The PMI Global Series is happening in Rwanda. So if by any means you are in Rwanda, please make sure we catch up. I'll be there live and direct. And I guess I will send more information around that to everyone very soon. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see next month when we bring another person to tell us and to share with us their knowledge, and keep swinging. Bye for now.
Thanks.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks,
Welcome.
everyone. Mr. Patrick.
Pam, we go talk later. Be me.